I'm Yonsei, or fourth generation. My father was 4 years old when he was interned and sent to Kaslo with his family after Pearl Harbor. And I've been very interested in this history of my family and how it's affected future generations. In the Sedai Oral History Collection, over 88% of the interviews of our over 200 interviews are internment survivors. Many of the Issei, the people that were adults at that time, have passed away. And about 70% of our collection is Nisei, which is the second generation, many of whom were teenagers or children during the war years.
In many ways, they shielded me from the ugliness of what was happening.
Interviewing people that were children at that time and seeing them reflect on the strength, resilience, and how their parents protected them and allowed them to still have a happy childhood is so incredibly inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time.
They took it all away, and that very night they took my father away.
I think the most difficult thing about having people share their stories is that many Japanese Canadians are very modest. And most elders feel that they want to highlight other people's stories or talk about other people's accomplishments, and they don't really want to take up that space for themselves. It is a lot of heavy lifting to try to give the context of the Japanese Canadian internment, all the things that happened. And a lot of survivors will tend to minimize it because that resilience is the thing that they want to put forward and they want to put a positive spin on it. But those individual stories all go together to create a really interesting and rich history and nuance of historical injustice. One of my favorite stories that I've come across in my work is a gentleman who was a child during the internment, and he recounts this story of being in Hastings Park. And there was a very awful portion of the internment when families were forced to stay basically in horse stalls until the government decided where to put everyone and before the camps were ready. So this was an awful period of time. Families were living in these horse stalls. The bathrooms were basically animal troughs. And apparently the food did not agree with some of the people. And there was a period of time when all the latrines were being used quite a bit. And I've been told the story of some young boys getting a bunch of toilet roll and setting it on fire and sending it down the latrine.
Can you imagine the fire going right underneath you? Out, all the way to the end. That was bad.
No one that I've seen has admitted to doing this, but there have been more than one person, more than one man who is lit up as if they remembering what it was like being a small child and seeing this prank as this flaming toilet roll went along the toilets, all along the trough as everyone was using the bathroom with their stomach aches. That's a great story. One of the big challenges of this work is actually a technical one. The bulk of the oral histories that were done in 2010 and 2011 were shot on mini DV tapes that basically start to degrade after 15 to 20 years. We've had to digitize 400 tapes, and that's just the beginning of this process. Once the tapes have been digitized, it doesn't mean they're perfectly safe either. Digital files also need preservation techniques and long-term storage and multiple places that they're stored to make sure they stay safe. And that takes money and time and expertise. So for a small nonprofit cultural institution like ours, we have to really look at funding for ongoing preservation and digital preservation. And that's sort of invisible work that is hard to show the value of that. But if these oral histories are going to be available to future generations, it's really important to do.
It is the responsibility for those of my generation, parents and grandparents, to make sure that our children and our grandchildren know where we're from.
No matter what your background, if you have elders in your life, taking the time to sit down and interview them, that's the way we keep these stories alive. And it doesn't have to be just about digital preservation. It can just be about oral history storytelling and sharing stories from generation to generation. You won't regret it.